Welcome back to the Retro Chat podcast. Andy here, and this week we're going to be going back in time to 1997 September and to the NEC Arena in Birmingham, England, because tonight we're going to be looking back at a pay-per-view that aired on Sky Sports box office. It airs on the WWE Network now, but it is largely forgotten, and that is WWF One Night Only. That was the 5 years since the last big pay-per-view at SummerSlam headlined Wembley Arena. Before we get into that, though, let's give you some details. If you would like to subscribe to the show, you can do. All you need to do is go to a major podcast provider. That could be Spotify, it could be Google Podcasts, it could be Apple, it could be Amazon Music, it could be Audible, Stitcher, TuneIn, Anchor. The list goes on. And subscribe to Retro Chat Podcast. Put that in the search bar, click up subscribe or follow. If you're on Apple, leave us a review, because the more reviews we get, the more follows we get, the higher up the rankings we go, which means the more we can give you back. Now, you can also join us on social media, and you can interact with me and all of us here at the Retro Chat Podcast, and you can do that in 4 very simple ways. Facebook and Instagram, search and follow the Retro Chat Podcast. You can tweet us at Retro Chat Pod, and you can visit the YouTube channel, which, if you're watching on video, you're doing now, at Retro Chat Podcast UK, and click subscribe to be made aware of the latest videos before the podcast hits. So these videos will be released maybe an hour, maybe 2, maybe a day before the audio stream hits the podcaster. So you are getting something slightly different. Plus, when we got a guest, it's twin screen. You get to see my guest, who is sat to my right. No guest this week, though, just me. Big thank you to Dan Barnsdale for the last couple of weeks. We've been talking all things Star Trek. We had Shawn Michaels, Steve Grieve a couple of weeks ago talking about the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Next week, I'm here talking about the VR Troopers, the band's next property following the Power Rangers. But today, it's all about WWF One Night Only. And the thing you got to remember about One Night Only is, we weren't used to having pay-per-views over here. The last time that we had a pay-per-view in the UK was of SummerSlam of 1992, where my former broadcast colleague and my friend Lee Tyers from Ministry was actually at the event. And I'll be talking to Lee about that at some point in the future, I'm sure. 5 years was a long time. 5 years, a lot had changed. WCW was on the rampage. The WWF were falling behind in the ratings of Monday Night Raw. The Monday Night Wars were going all the way to WCW. So what did Vince do? Vince realized that the ratings were falling. He realized that competition in WCW was increasing. He realized that viewing figures were down, attendances were down in the US. So what would you do? That's right. You come over and you capitalize on one market at which WCW hadn't been able to beat, and that was the UK. So this event took place on September the 20th of 1997, and it was headlined once again by the Bulldog, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, being in the main event. Not for the WWF Championship, not for the Intercontinental Championship, but for the European Championship. And he went up against the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Also on this card, Owen Hart, the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart, went up against Vader. The Godwins went up against the Legion of Doom. And in a rematch from SummerSlam of that year, Bret the Hitman Hart defended the World Wrestling Federation Championship against the Phenom, the Undertaker. So the show kicks off really with a really good package. And that's what WWE were known for. They were known for putting out, and they still do, some really good intro packages, telling you about what's going to happen, talking to you about the main event. And in this one, they made the Bulldog come across as the really likable face. He grew up from the humble beginnings in Manchester, and he became one of the most popular superstars on the planet. And it was on this night, unlike SummerSlam 92, where he won the Intercontinental Championship, that he was coming home the defending champion, the hero, and he was going to defend it against an unknown opponent. They didn't say it was going to be Shawn Michaels on the video, but as we all know, it was. So the match kicks off, the show kicks off with a rematch from SummerSlam of 1997, and that was Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, still in the garb, the Lordish garb that he wore at that time, although beginning to transition out of the Triple H that we knew there, more into the game. He was accompanied by Chyna, and they went up against Mick Foley, or in this case, Dude Love. And this all kicked off really at the King of the Ring of that year, followed on at SummerSlam in a steel cage match, and then they had a show-long brawl at In Your House Canadian Stampede. So the entire year, really, Mick Foley and Hunter Hearst Helmsley had spent at war with each other. But tonight, on this occasion, they squared off in a match with an entirely different vibe. This was a comedy match. This is what this was designed to be. It was designed to be a warm-up. It was a basic, it was by the numbers. There was nothing really special in it. There was no real massive spots. There was nothing that you would expect Mick Foley to do. But you know what, guys? It worked. Yeah, it showed the chemistry between Triple H and Mick Foley was there, and it was a good match. And it did what it was meant to do. It got the crowd warmed up. Yeah, it got the crowd ready. It got the crowd interested. They were loud. They were popping because we'd been deprived of live events, people. And now we were getting one with two major superstars, and one that we didn't know was on the cusp of becoming a Hall of Famer. And that is, of course, Triple H. So the match, although maybe being two stars really, worked well together. They produced a solid match. They got the crowd into the show. Yeah. Jerry the King Lawler, which was joining commentary with McMahon and JR at various points throughout this match and throughout the show, trying to do his best British accent. Didn't quite come off, just like I can't do accents, so I can't do American. But it was, it was a nice try, I think. Yeah. Okay. So back to the match. Let's talk away from Jerry Lawler's bad commentary. Dude Love was in control. Dude Love was beating the living hell out of Triple H, but Hunter landed the pedigree. He picked up the first win of the evening. So Triple H won the opening match here at One Night Only, pinning Mick Foley, Dude Love, in the ring. Then, the hottest woman in wrestling at the time, Sunny Tammy Sitch, appeared on screen. And she came down to ringside to introduce the next match. And I'd forgotten because, you think about the fact it's been years since this pay-per-view started. The whole card is completely different. And Sunny coming out, Tammy Sitch, absolutely gorgeous, as she always was, introduced Leif Cassidy, the man known as Al Snow, faced off against Tiger Ali Singh with his manager in his corner, Tiger Jeet Singh. Now, if anybody can remember Tiger Ali Singh, guys, you've done better than me because I'm known as the king of wrestling trivia, but I can't even remember him. I can. I'm kind of, lying. Tiger Ali Singh came to the ring as a good guy, really high-fiving the crowd here at Birmingham and coming across as an all smiley, baby-facey, nicey, nice. Then turned. Beautiful turn. Absolutely beautiful. Because it wasn't intentional. He didn't mean to. He got on the mic. He was cutting a promo talking about how proud he was to be an Asian Canadian, of which a typical UK crowd booed. How we should stay drug-free. That's long before CM Punk. How he was the new true messiah. And how, with the support of the Canadian fans, he was going to set the wrestling world on fire. And it really was, if you think about it and you watch it back and try and watch it on YouTube, one of those promos where the bad guy believes and pretends that he's really a good guy to get heat. Except with Ali Singh, he wasn't pretending. Yeah. And he either was, just a bit stupid and didn't realize that the UK wasn't in Canada, or he'd been told to go out and cut this awful cheesy promo as a rib. But whatever happened, he did. turned him heel instantly to the UK crowd. But thankfully, and we don't often say this, Leif Cassidy or Al Snow came out. He attacked the confused Canadian from behind, but he couldn't stop Tiger Ali Singh picking up the win after a short and forgettable contest. Your winner was Tiger Ali Singh. The third match on the card, and it was our first of our championship matches. The World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships were on the line, as the WWF Tag Team Champions, the Headbanger, Mosh and Thrasher, went up against Los Boricuas, Savio Vega and Miguel Perez. Now remember, we're in the year of stables. We're in the stable era. We've got Los Boricuas. We've got the Nation of Domination. We've got the DOA, the Disciples of Apocalypse. We'll have the Union joining at some point. We've got DX. It is group after group. And you talk about AEW having a lot of groups. Well, 1997, the WWF was pretty bad. Now, just a few days earlier on pay-per-view in the US at In Your House Ground Zero, we actually had new World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions crowned as the Headbangers defeated Owen Hart and the UK's own British Bulldog. So they then put their titles on the line against Savio and Miguel in a match that was fun, but kind of went on just a little bit too long. This match exploded into life in the early going with a flurry of excitement and finished with a hot ending, but it just kind of sucked in the middle, really. It was good at the start, it was good at the end, but the middle kind of let it down. The Headbangers retained after almost 20 minutes, but they could have done the same match with a much shorter time, about 10, and still kept the crowd engaged in what they were. So your winners and still World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions. Sorry. I go back into old wrestling speak when I do that. Were the Headbangers. We had a backstage skit following this, and this is when we're taken to a pre-recorded interview with the UK's own Davey Boy Smith. And it was conducted by the Hall of Famer, good old JR Jim Ross. And JR asked the calm and collected Davey Boy about tonight's match. Bulldog, at this point in time, came across as the UK's own. He came across as the lovable face, and it wasn't like his traditional, you're going down promo style. And what this did was it kind of made him look likable. It made him look like a well-rounded, a well-respected champion going into the match. Because what he did was he dedicated it to his sister, who had recently undergone a battle with cancer. And he also said that in order to beat Shawn Michaels and to combat the quickness, he had dropped about 2 stone. Sorry, that was Scottish. I was trying to go Manchester. I don't mean to offend any of my listeners. Or 28 pounds. Next up. Oh, I don't want to talk about this match. Please don't make me talk about this match. Well, I suppose I better had. Flash Funk. Oh, Flash, you are so funky. Sorry. Went up against the Patriot. As expected. Yeah. The pro-USA Patriot, Del Wilkes, heavily booed by the UK crowd. Although Vince McMahon trying to save the Patriot said he received a mixed reaction. Okay. The match itself was fine. It wasn't designed to be a 5-star. It wasn't designed to set the world on light, but it did what it did. It was a mid-card match. It was halfway through the pay-per-view. Nothing really to say. The Patriot Del Wilkes won with the Uncle Slam, and the crowd, who hadn't given a damn about anything this entire match, booed him right out of the building and back to South Carolina. Now, 5 years after their ride to the ring on Harleys, the LOD, the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal were back in the UK, this time getting ready to take on the Godwins. And the promo that we saw here backstage wasn't like anything else they've done before. It was the same. Hawk and Animal went through their shtick of vowing to maim and decapitate their opponents, and Hawk ended it with the "Oh rush." But it did what it was meant to do, right? It got the crowd pumped. Yeah. Hawk and Animal, the late, great Hawk, the late great Animal. I've had the pleasure of talking to Animal before. Ultimately, both have now passed away. The LOD were a phenomenal tag team, and at some point in the future, we will be doing an episode on the Legion of Doom right here on the Retro Chat podcast. But when they went in against Henry O and Phineas I, the Godwin, which we're entering an era of cartoon characters again in the WWE, and this really emphasized that. Hog and Pig. Yeah, okay. And this one was a perfect example of how when you watch a match in person, it's cool, but when you watch it back on TV, it doesn't quite strike the same balance. And that was this one. You see, LOD versus the Godwins was as dull as dishwater, and it was just one really, really long move followed by a doomsday device. But the crowd, the Birmingham crowd, if you watch the video, if you watch it back on the network, were so into it, it was over. And that had more to do with Hawk and Animal than the match itself. After several minutes of nothing happening besides the crowd raising the roof, it was Phineas who ate the pin to create one of the biggest pops of the night. And your winners of that match was the Legion of Doom. We then had an in-ring interview where good old JR, Jim Ross, interviewed the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, who reminded us that he had been injured at the hands of the nation leader, Farouk. And in the ring, Jim Ross told us that those injuries had meant that Shamrock was out of action tonight, meaning we wouldn't see him take on the Rocket Owen Hart as scheduled. Instead, Vader would be the replacement. He would go up against Hart, and Shamrock would talk to us all about how disappointed he was being able to compete. But he was interrupted, and I really don't know if this was a good interruption or not, because the man who came out to the ring was Billy Gunn. Rockabilly. Truthfully, I can't remember much about this one because I did kind of switch off. But what I can remember is that Gunn mocked Shamrock. He claimed that he had got a doctor's note for tummy ache to get out of wrestling, and Shamrock, as always, didn't take kindly to that, and he slapped Billy Gunn into the ankle lock. We then went to another interview, as this time Vincent Kennedy McMahon spoke via video link. I love that. Not backstage, just a video link somewhere in the UK to the Hitman Bret Hart. Hart received a mixed reaction from the live crowd because bear in mind at this point, Hart is leading the Hart Foundation. He's turned his back on America. He is saying that it's the Canadian, the international fans are the ones who he are working for. He's being supported by and being booed out of the door by the Americans. So even with this mixed reaction from the live crowd, Bret insisted that the British fans still believed in him. And he was going to do right by defeating The Undertaker, who the Hitman said was likely to be Bret's biggest fight yet. Now, McMahon asked Bret if he could hear the loud boos he was getting. And Bret just fumbled through the promo. Next up was Owen Hart in-ring action going up against Vader. And what was really weird about this match was Bret the Hitman Hart was booed out of the arena. We just said that, right? Owen was cheered. He was like the icon. Everybody loved Owen Hart, right? And Owen played up to this admiration. He was smiling. He was high-fiving fans on the way to the ring for a match with his former Camp Cornette teammate, Vader. It wasn't the best match on the card, but for a while it was up there, and it was a worthy container, with Owen Hart flying around the ring and Vader using his bulk to dominate the majority of the contest. This match really kind of showcased why Owen Hart, and Dan Barnsell and I talked about Owen a few weeks ago here on the show, why Owen Hart was just so damn good. He could go in there and he could mix it up with anyone and everybody, and you would get a good match out of him. But for Owen to be the babyface and for the crowd to be behind him, wanting him to get the win, I mean, that was just unseen. That was uncalled for. At one point, Hart got the sharpshooter on Vader. He got the flying top rope drop kick and that rocked the Mastodon, and he tried it again, but was caught, squashed, and pinned. We then had another promo. This time it was The Undertaker cutting a promo on the Hitman Bret Hart, where he said that we wouldn't see a repeat of SummerSlam when Bret beat Taker for the title, thanks to a misplaced chair shot from the referee Shawn Michaels. We then move to the first of our two main events. The WWF World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship, as Bret the Hitman Hart, the defending champion, faced off against The Undertaker. Now, when I watched this back in the day, I remember being sucked into it. And for once, it was really nice when I was watching this back, taking that smart fan off, putting it down, and watching it as a fan. It was amazing. It showed you why you had two of the all-time greats. The Hitman Bret Hart, the excellence of execution. The Phenom, The Undertaker. They threw everything and anything at it. And for the time that this match was on, I didn't look away. I was engrossed in this match. It was tremendous. But your winner by disqualification and still WWF champion was, of course, the Hitman, Bret Hart. That led us on to the main event. But before we did that, with a chorus of boos running around the NEC arena, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, cut a boastful and arrogant promo in which he promised not only to juice us the match of the night, but to capture the European Championship in the process. Here we go. The main event. The UK's own Davey Boy Smith came to the ring. The crowd going amazing. He made a very humble, a straightforward entrance. He was accompanied by his sister, who had dedicated the match to. And the match started off well. Michaels was being the typical heel and getting his comeuppance by the Bulldog at every turn. But then the insurance policy came down to the ring. Ravishing Rick Rude came down and then descended into a long, slow, and painful to watch slog that saw the Heartbreak Kid take his opponent apart. We then had the arrival of Hunter Hearst Helmsley and China after the Bulldog started making some sort of a comeback. The numbers game just proved too much for the Bulldog, who succumbed to a Triple H pedigree before passing out to HBK's figure four. The ending was just awful. I just don't think the ending fitted the match or fitted what it was trying to do. But it did give us this. The new European champion, Shawn Michaels, the Grand Slam winner at that point in the World Wrestling Federation. And really kind of the precursor to what was going to happen in November of that year, the Montreal Screwjob. The numbers game obviously continued. They were beating them down. That was Shawn, China, Triple H, Rude, until Owen Hart and Bret Hart came out to make the save. That was a unique way of finishing it, because what you saw here was the real formation, the beginning, the phoenix beginning to develop from the ashes, because this would be the launch of D-Generation X. So all in all, you know what? Was it a good pay-per-view? Yeah, it was a fun, interesting pay-per-view to watch. Was it going to set the world alight? Absolutely not. Is it one that you remember? No. But can you pick it up and watch it and enjoy it? Absolutely. I haven't seen this in over 20 years. But I sat there and I watched it for 3 hours. And by the end of it, I was fully engrossed. It was a cracking pay-per-view. And one that if you haven't seen it on the WWE Network, I would fully recommend you do. All right. That's it for this week. What do you think about One Night Only? What do you think about the British Bulldog versus Shawn Michaels? What do you think about the British Bulldog? What do you think about Shawn Michaels? What do you think about the World Wrestling Federation in the 90s? What would you like us to cover here at Retro Chat? Let me know, and you do that by social media. I'm a Facebook or Instagram. Join us at Retro Chat Podcast. Tweet me directly at Retro Chat Pod, or visit the YouTube channel and leave me a comment at Retro Chat Podcast UK. And you can subscribe to the show on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, or Amazon Music. Next week, as we said, we are talking all things VR Troopers, Trooper Transform, the spin-off to the Power Rangers, and we got a whole lot more left to come. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm Andy Evans. I will see you at ringside right here at Retro Chat. Until then, bye-bye.